10 wide receivers who could get cut. And I'm going to go through all of the names, a lot of them big-time names here. We'll start things off with Dez Bryant. Could be cut by the Dallas Cowboys. He has a $16.5 million cap hit in 2018. And let's face it, guys, Dez Bryant has essentially lost his ability to be a #1 wide receiver, at least in the Dallas Cowboys offense. And look, will the Cowboys cut Dez Bryant? I think it's more likely than not that they won't cut him. So, you know, I think you look at this cap savings here, $8.5 million. I think it's good. But the problem is there's $8 million in dead money if the Cowboys do cut him. And the logic is, who out there are you going to get to replace Dez Bryant in the free market or via the draft, etc.? And I don't think the Dallas Cowboys will have really the monetary options and wealth, if you will, to go out and get a replacement for Dez Bryant. Now, I put him here because there is a significant amount of savings, but I think it's probably unlikely that the Cowboys cut him, but I do want to put him here as a name to monitor because you're going to hear about him through the coming weeks. Dez Bryant hasn't had a 100-yard game since November 13th, 2016, ladies and gentlemen, due base salaries of $12.5 million in 2018 and $16.5 million in, actually that's $12.5 million in both 2018 and 2019, and we'll count $16.5 against the salary cap both those seasons. So an expensive guy, maybe he figures it out in 2018. We shall see. Another wide receiver who could get cut, Michael Crabtree for the Oakland Raiders. Reports are that John Gruden may be looking into cutting Crabtree here, and a portion of it kind of has to do with the Aqib Talib fight and the character issues and sometimes being a bit of a diva. And so you couple that with the fact that he had a serious case of drops this past season as well. I had Derek Carr as my regression candidate award winner, air quotes, for 2017. And again, I talked about how it wasn't all on Derek Carr. It was on that offensive line that didn't pass protect as well. And oh, by the way, didn't get a lot of help from Michael Crabtree in the receiving game and Amari Cooper. Look at Crabtree's stats there. 58 receptions, 618 yards, and 8 touchdowns. The 8 touchdowns are good, but the yardage, not there. He's owed $7 million next season, signed a 4-year, $34 million contract extension with Oakland in December of 2015. And by the way, no dead cap money if the Raiders choose to cut Crabtree. So there's really no penalty here. It's whether or not the new regime with John Gruden wants to cut Michael Crabtree. That'll be the big question mark there, but a name to monitor, no doubt about it. Next one here, Jeremy Maclin, wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens. Cap savings, if cut, $5 million. He was never on the same page with Joe Flacco in 2017. Also dealt with his fair share of injuries, too. And part of that has to do with Joe Flacco missing all of the preseason due to his back injury and really couldn't practice with Jeremy Maclin and develop that chemistry. But at the same time, Maclin is not a #1 wide receiver. And he is not a game-breaker kind of wideout where opposing defenses and coordinators are essentially preparing for Maclin and what he can do. They're not doing that with this guy. And so I think the Ravens, in one of the worst salary cap situations in the NFL, are going to have to make some decisions here in terms of their wide receiving core. Only the Cardinals, Dolphins, Steelers, Eagles, and Chiefs are in a worse situation in terms of salary cap space for 2018. This according to overthecap.com. And so the Ravens got to decide on Jeremy Maclin. They got to decide on another wide receiver, too, that I'll talk about later in the show. But Jeremy Maclin, I think, is a prime candidate to get cut by the Baltimore Ravens. And the Ravens, you know, they got to figure out what they're going to do with Marshall Yanda. They got to address the offensive line in the draft, perhaps, and get a wide receiver in the draft, too. So the Ravens have a lot of things they need to take care of. And they don't have a lot of money to do it because Joe Flacco has that big-time cap hit. So, yeah, when the Ravens signed him to that big-time deal, you know, that's what happens, and the Ravens are kind of paying for it in a sense. So Jeremy Maclin could get cut by Baltimore. Let's stay in the AFC North here. Brandon LaFell owed $2.5 million next season, and a stat line that is frankly underwhelming in my opinion. The Cincinnati Bengals had their fair share of problems across the board, most notably on the offensive line, and Andy Dalton really did the best he could at the quarterback position this year because Marvin Lewis, for some reason, hates John Ross and gave him a healthy scratch many times in 2017, and A.J. Green was often double-teamed, although Green had a solid campaign. And then there's Brandon LaFell, who just couldn't get it done. And look at the number there. Owed $2.5 million next season. How about the cap savings if cut? $4 million. And look, the Cincinnati Bengals are not known for their big splashy moves here, and this wouldn't be a huge over-the-top splashy move, so I could see the Cincinnati Bengals doing it. LaFell, a 45.7 Pro Football Focus grade in 2017. That is a poor grade, according to PFF. Tyler Boyd was better, a wide receiver there for Cincinnati. So I think it's time to let John Ross into the fold here. And Marvin Lewis, I'm telling you, you got to give this kid a chance and see what he can do down the field. He's a speedster, and he can blow the top off the coverage. Brandon LaFell, I think his better years are behind him, and I think the Cincinnati Bengals would make a good decision if they were to cut Brandon LaFell. All right, let's go to the next name here. So the Green Bay Packers have a decision to make. Either they got to cut Jordy Nelson or the player that I'm going to talk about after him. But Jordy Nelson, of course, owed $10.4 million next season. And that stat line right there for 2017, very underwhelming. So Jordy never surpassed 79 yards receiving this year. He's turning 33 years old. And I understand the Aaron Rodgers injury kind of factored into all of this, and Brett Hundley, and yeah, I get that. But even when Aaron Rodgers was in at quarterback, Jordy was still very underwhelming. Pro Football Focus rank of 49 among wide receivers, and Jordy averaged 9.1 yards per catch and finished with 9 straight games under 40 yards receiving this year. So I just think he's lost his speed. He's lost his ability to create separation on the outside. It's kind of a Dez Bryant situation here where it's like Jordy and Dez were both really elite in their prime years, and now things are starting to kind of turn the corner, I should say, for the worse. And so maybe a full-time move to the slot could happen for Jordy in Green Bay. But look, the Packers got to make a decision with this guy or this guy, Randall Cobb here, wide receiver for the Packers. So the Packers signed a 4-year extension with Davante Adams in December. So Davante Adams is there to stay. So it comes down to Jordy and Randall. Randall signed a 4-year, $40 million deal after his very impressive 2014 campaign and really hasn't lived up to that investment since. So the whole discussion here about salary cap cuts here, folks, is really predicated on return on investment. Are you getting that return on the football field through your investment of, a contract with this player? In this instance, the Packers are not getting a return on their investment with Randall Cobb, as we have a reaction poll for you folks out there. It's got to be one of these two. If the Packers cut a wide receiver, who should it be? Jordy Nelson or Randall Cobb? Give us a heart for Jordy, a like for Randall Cobb, and by the way, throw in your thoughts why. I see Will chiming in the comments section saying Jordy, so be sure to let me know why you think that receiver particularly should be cut by the Green Bay Packers. But I think Randall Cobb or Jordy, one of those two will be gone. And just to wrap up my thoughts here on Randall, never surpassed 85 yards receiving, and he too struggled with Aaron Rodgers in at quarterback, and Randall Cobb ranked 55th among wide receivers according to Pro Football Focus. All right, let's get to the next wide receiver who could get cut. Brandon Marshall for the Giants here. Injured his ankle in October and didn't see the football field after that. So there you see a stat line that is very bad. 18 receptions, 154 yards, and no touchdowns. And Marshall is kind of that touchdown red zone type of guy. That's who he is now. Cap savings, if cut, $5.2 million. And the Giants now need to look towards focusing on the interior of that offensive line and perhaps at left tackle as well. And they are going to need as much money as they can kind of muster here to address that. They probably should address the linebacker position in the draft. I think there are some good linebackers in the second and third round, respectively, to kind of do that. Meanwhile, maybe the Giants cut Brandon Marshall to get some money together to go out and get one Andrew Norwell, guard for the Carolina Panthers, who's going to become a free agent and who really is a free agent at this point. And Norwell, one of the premier guards out there. So the Giants, they have needs to deal with. They still have Odell Beckham Jr. and Sterling Shepard to kind of hold things together at the wide receiver position. And look, Roger Lewis, Tavares King, they can show some flashes too. So I think Brandon Marshall is expendable here for the Giants. All right, let's go to Chicago. Markus Wheaton, wide receiver there for the Bears, barely saw the field this past season. And this is an interesting line that I read somewhere. 3 catches to match his 3 different injuries. He made out this year earning $1.75 million per reception. How about that for math? So cap savings if cut, $5 million. Wheaton this year had a Pro Football Focus grade of 47.2, but it really doesn't matter because the guy barely saw the football field. And Wheaton now has a new regime above him with Matt Nagy as the new head coach. And will Nagy cut Wheaton and save some money that way and then go to the draft and get a wide receiver in that first round, i.e. Calvin Ridley? It's going to be very interesting to see here. So let's say the Bears do decide to cut Wheaton. I think that is a telltale sign that the Bears are going to go to the draft in that first round and grab a wide receiver with that first pick that they have. So Wheaton, I think this is a no-brainer, and I'm sure a lot of Chicago Bears fans out there will agree with me. He is as good as gone. All right, let's go to the next one here. Another Baltimore Raven. This guy, Breshad Perriman. I don't think he'll get cut this year, probably next year, but he is a name to watch out for. He's not owed a lot next season, but I just think at this point, it's got to be frustrating for the Baltimore Ravens now, who thought this guy was going to blow the top off the coverage and create opportunities underneath for the likes of Ben Watson and Dennis Pitta and all these receivers here, and it just has not panned out. And it's tough to see because he had a great career in college, and it had just really hasn't translated, mostly because he's been hurt. And I'm telling you, Joe Flacco better speak up this offseason. And I know that's not his MO. He's a quiet guy. He stays pretty reserved about this stuff. But behind the scenes, maybe not. He should say something to Baltimore Ravens leadership and be like, look, this guy is not working out. And I can't get in a groove with him because he's never on the football field. And, oh, by the way, yeah, remember when I signed a big contract with you guys and my huge cap hit? Well, you guys need to create some savings here. He probably won't say that, but it's true. And so the Baltimore Ravens may be looking past Breshad Perriman at this point, although I see him coming back for 2018. Keep an eye out, though, for 2019. All right, finally, Tavon Austin. So the Rams have a lot of decisions to make with some of their free agents here. LaMarcus Joyner and Tremaine Johnson and Sammy Watkins as well. And the Rams are in a pretty solid salary cap situation. It's not bad at all. But Tavon Austin owed $5 million next season, and look at the stats. I mean, yeah, he's not going to be a wide receiver for the future. You kind of want to use him as a gimmicky kind of player, right, for the trick plays and use him as a Swiss Army knife kind of deal. I understand that. But again, return on investment. This is too much money here. And there would be $5 million in dead money if Tavon Austin were to be cut. So that is one thing I'm kind of looking at here and saying to myself, all right, maybe he won't get cut. But again, the Rams, you know, there is a big-time deal looming with one Aaron Donald that they have to figure out. And again, I mentioned those free agents there. I think Sammy Watkins will probably walk if the Rams don't cut Tavon Austin. But I do see LaMarcus Joyner and Tremaine Johnson remaining there in L.A. Robert Woods, by the way, has the same cap hit as Tavon Austin. And you tell me which wide receiver was more valuable to the L.A. Rams last year.